So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews. We'll discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes, their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this afternoon, I'm delighted to have with us Joe Simons, who's co-founder at Edna. So, Joe, firstly, thank you for spending some time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, Edna, what you do, how you help people, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me, Chris.
Very
Uh,
welcome.
so, as I say, I'm one of the co-founders, one of five co-founders of Edna. We are a creative studio based in Leeds, and at the root of what that means is we help businesses build and manage their brands to support growth in their own sort of their objectives. We work with a real range of clients from sort of local startups and independents right through to big multinationals. Um, for us, we don't like to pigeonhole ourselves with a
Yep.
certain type of client. But we will say we do our preference is to work with people who are often at that intersection of change, as I think that's where often we can really support them and add the most value for what they're going through. So that's about us, really. I guess that's a very whistle-stop tour of what we do. I can bang on about that for a lot more, but I'm sure we've got lots of other things to talk about. So,
Brilliant. No, that's
yeah.
great. No, that really does help. And yeah, as you say, you don't want to pigeonhole clients, but is there rather than necessarily a sector or industry or size of business, is there a type of person? Is there a personality that you work best with, if you like? Is there anything that if I was a potential client, what sort of things I should be or do to make your services most valuable to me, if that makes sense?
As I say, we're in a business of brands and building brands,
Yep.
and for brands to quite often be successful, they need to be a bit different and stand out.
Yep.
And quite often, the people who recognise that are the ones that we really want to work with.
Great.
And hopefully, they see with what if you want the run of the mill standard stuff, aren't interested in really standing out, we're probably not for you. But
Brilliant.
if you want to push the boat a little bit more, do something a bit genuinely different, but let's chat.
Brilliant.
So as I say, we don't want to sort of limit who we work with, but
No.
we're quite clear about that as well. Um,
But it's a great point. It's like, yeah, we want to be different. As you say, some people say, well, we just, we might want to present ourselves as one of many of these options rather than speak. But what you prefer is and work better with. Yeah, we're really different. We're in a field of one, as it were.
yeah,
Um,
I mean, it's so competitive out there, and
yeah,
regardless of what sector you're in, whether it's B2C, B2B, it doesn't matter. It's really competitive. So that's standing out and really sort of flying your flag for something in particular is even more important than it's ever been. So yeah,
brilliant. So, Joe, perhaps we could start by talking a little bit about your background, how you got into business, and why this particular one for you.
how far back do you want me to go, Chris? I
Whatever
can
works for
go.
you. You could guide it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, as far back as you want to go, that helps the story, I guess.
All right, okay. So I suppose I've been doing this for over 20 years. My background is as a graphic designer traditionally.
Yep.
In more recent years, as the market shifted and my role shifted, and I've got a bit older, my role has become more brand and strategy focused.
Yep.
Um, I think that's probably a natural evolution that a lot of people experience. I think.
Yes.
In terms of wider context, unsurprisingly, I was good at art at school. From a really young age, I was
Yep.
I was good at drawing and took to it quite naturally without much need guidance or direction to
Yep.
into that. And that kind of progressed through school. I did really well at the stuff I was good at: drawing, art, design, and sports. Maybe less so in languages and maths, but maybe again that's not so
Yeah.
surprising either. Ended up going to study industrial design at Leeds University. When I graduated, I kind of there were pretty limited options to be a product designer or an industrial designer in the north of England. Um, at that point, I couldn't afford to move to London, and the bank of mum and dad couldn't pay either.
Yep.
So I'd done bits of graphic design throughout my university degree, and I'd done bits for friends. So I did have a bit of a portfolio, and I was like, okay, well, let's give that a go. I need some income. I'm in the real world right now, so and I managed to get a job at a pretty well-respected Leeds design studio. Stayed there for a few years, moved on, stayed around Leeds and Manchester for another 3 to 4 years. did a stint at London in London for about 4 years, working with some really big brands,
Yep.
and then moved back to Leeds about 8 years ago. I was then working for a small business in Leeds, and we built that business up from a team of about three to a team of about 18 at one point.
Well, great.
But as we talked about before, COVID changed a lot of things, and
Yes.
the chap whose business that was, who was the owner, he was a bit older, and he decided he wanted to retire. During COVID, which was great for him, but not so great for the people that were working for
Yes.
him at that point, myself included.
Yep.
So we were made, the studio closed just before Christmas 2019, yeah. Well, just prior to lockdown 2.0, so sorry, 2020.
Yep.
Myself and the other guys, the other founders who became my founders, had a choice to make. What do we do? Do we go and
Yes.
try and do we go and look for another job, or do we kind of take the bull by the horns, as it were, the proverbial bull by the horns, and kind of see where this takes us? And with it being COVID and with it being lockdowns, there wasn't a great deal of many other choices at that time.
Yep.
So we did, and we made a go of it. It was that sink or swim moment, and that's, as I said, that was 5 years ago. We just celebrated our 55th birthday, and there's a team of 15 of us now.
Brilliant.
And so for us at the moment, it's about growing, but it's about growing sustainably and in the right
Yep.
way. To do the right work. So that's kind of where we're at. And I appreciate I've probably waffled on a bit there,
No,
maybe.
not at all. It's really interesting. I was going to, I mean, I was going to ask a question. We could still talk about it about, five co-founders is not quite a lot as in a bad way, but it's you rarely see, five people coming together. But obviously, explaining that you were all working together at the time makes a lot of sense. That you presumably really got on well and just went, let's just keep going as a team.
Yeah, I mean it's a blessing and a curse. And I think the other guys, well, I hope they will agree with me. And that it's great because you can take a step away from the business. You can go on holiday when you need to, and you don't need to worry
Yes.
about coverage. It sounds like a small thing, but it is really important.
No, not at all.
Um, and I remember seeing my dad had his own business for years, and I remember being on family holidays and him having to phone up his business every day, multiple times a day, just to check in. And
Yeah.
luckily, I don't have to do that, and the other guys don't either. But
Brilliant.
I guess one of the consequences is that we can be a little bit slower in decision making, but
Yes.
we're very democratic as well. So again,
Yep.
there's you've just got to adapt and to what you're working with, I guess. So
Yeah. No. Brilliant. Yeah. No. That makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I yeah, it's work with so many owner managed businesses as I do. Yeah, I wouldn't honestly underestimate the value of just knowing you can go away and there's four other guys that are going to cover. It really is
mm,
quite valuable, I think, because it's that, holidays should be um, uh, resuscitation time, shouldn't they? Replenish.
mm,
But if we're always connected to business, because either we can't go on holiday at all, or we're always connected where we are, we're not really getting that value. So
yeah.
totally makes sense. So 5 years now, you may or may not be aware about the survival rates of businesses in general, but 5 years is quite a significant milestone. It's a very sad fact that only 20% of businesses survive for 5 years. 80% fail in the first 5 years.
Right.
Um, so you're in the top 20. Unfortunately, and I don't want to, because I'm sure you won't be in this stat, but um, of the 20% that survive, 80% of those will fail in the following 5 years. So
Yeah.
it is, although, it really is great to get where you are, it is also, that's that requirement to be really clear for the next five again. But well done. And it is definitely a milestone we're celebrating. So really, really great. And looking back over these 5 years, what are some of the biggest issues and challenges you've had to overcome, Joe?
Um, as I said, I suppose the first, frankly, the first 6 months, maybe a year, was just figuring out, is this viable?
Yeah,
Is it viable? Can we exist and have a good standard of life doing what we want to do here?
yep,
And so I think that was probably honestly, they're probably the first 6 months to a year. And then maybe, we didn't form Edna out of some big master plan. It wasn't
yes,
conceived whilst we were working for other
yep,
people. It was a product of the situation. And I think perhaps that's one of our strengths. We haven't taken that for granted. That,
yeah,
that I feel very privileged to be in the position of owning or one of the owners of a business, and I think maybe not taking that for granted is something that is probably quite a big learning.
Brilliant.
I think it is a privilege to
Yep.
be to have people working for you or working alongside you.
Yep.
Really, um, I guess I presume I expect most of the business owners will probably say a similar thing. Finding the right people is always hard,
Yep.
and finding the right people is hard. I don't want to not say the right people don't exist in the north of England, because they do, and there's some very talented
Yep.
people, but there's less of us.
Yep.
And there's a smaller talent pool, frankly, especially within the creative industries as well.
Yep.
So that can be quite a challenge sometimes. Um, and I guess, as I mentioned before, we're at a pretty important inflection point for our business. There's lots of challenges and lots of changes coming from the creative industries in particular.
Yes.
Um, so it's ensuring that we grow in the right way.
Yep.
Ensuring that we don't grow. We've seen it quite a lot within other people we know, or friends of friends of businesses. They take on clients, or they take on a certain type of work to enable them to grow, and it pushes them a certain type of direction,
Yeah.
and it isn't sustainable long term. I think we're very cautious not to do that. So for us, as I
Great.
mentioned, it's about sustainable growth. I think we're doing about 5 to 10% incremental growth per year. So it's slow and steady for us at the moment, which
Yep.
feels comfortable and feels maintainable,
Yep.
manageable as well. Um, yeah, I think that's what, and I think we'd like to take that forward as well.
Yep.
So yeah, I guess that's kind of where my head's at. I mean, I can talk in a little bit more detail about some of the challenges I think we've got coming up, but it's up to you whether you want to do that now or we can do that later.
Might talk. I'll probably talk about at the end, just looking forward, what that
Yeah,
looks like. But it's a really good, yeah, it's a really good point. It's being wary of those challenges, and whether it's from the challenges or other areas. What are some of the secrets that you've learned about growing successfully? What I say might be related to fixing the problems, but what else, what would you say is your guy? If you had a couple of bits of advice for somebody that was looking to grow, what would they be?
I mean, if you're looking to grow, I guess it's from my perspective, and I don't think this just applies to, well, it does just apply to business, but it's being really honest with what you're good at, and
Yes,
and
brilliant.
and not being too humble. You know, in my specific example, out of those 5 founders, 3 of those are also creative graphic designers from a background. But so on paper there would seem like a lot of crossover. Now, what's happened in the last 5 years is our roles have become a much more nuanced,
Yep.
and we've kind of lent into our strengths. And some of the other guys are far better at things than I am, and I'm better at them. And
Yes.
acknowledging that, and kind of leaving your ego at the door a little bit, and
Yep.
going, "You're far better at that than me, mate. You do it, and you'll absolutely smash it." So I think
Yep.
I think kind of getting over yourself a little bit is really important,
Yep.
and I think that can be applied to sort of leadership roles, but also perhaps when you're more junior in your career and you're trying to figure out what's right for you, is just be really honest with what you're good at and what you're not good at.
Absolutely.
I think it's probably one of the things that personally I've learned, and I think that's probably done worked quite well for Edna as well.
Yeah. I 100% agree. I do a lot of work with people on this because, you know, too many founders, too many people in business full stop, but founders especially end up taking on too much. And yeah, there's a guy called Brian Tracy, and one of the things he said, and we take a lot of the principles from just from this, is that the most successful, his belief is the most successful people, organizations, teams are the ones where most people spend most of their time doing the 3 things they really love and they're really good at.
Yeah, I'd agree 100%, because those things are, if you're lucky, they're the same thing.
They or they really are typically, or without exception, we're good at what we like and we like what we're good at. It's like they
Yeah,
are just the same thing. It's good to think about think about them slightly separately, just to be clear.
yeah,
But and also because I think we use something we call a skill fund matrix, which is on similar lines, but it looks at everything we do in terms of level of fun, which is the enjoy bit, but and the level of skill, which sometimes can highlight things that we're good at but we don't enjoy. And
yes,
while ultimately be good to delegate them. Probably they'd be one of the last things we delegate because they're important and it's us. But if we get that clarity of just and I talk to people about superpowers. It's like, what's your superpower? Because just do your superpower, and guess what's going to happen? If everyone's primarily doing things they really love and they're good at, absolutely the number one thing's going to happen is we're going to be happier just because we're doing stuff we love. If we're happier, we're going to be more efficient and effective. Therefore, we're probably going to be more profitable. So it is a profit strategy, not just a nice to have strategy. It's I think it's fundamental.
Yeah, and I think to your point there, that happiness is really important within that, and because you should, if you can enjoy what you do, brilliant. That's so much. It's going to lead. Well, it's going to give you a better life, frankly.
Absolutely. What
You know.
one of the reasons I do that, there were two key reasons I chose to be a business coach, going back quite a long time. But one of them was um, that too many people I met were saying that it was basically, well, I'll put my life on hold for 10 years and shovel a lot of crap, and hopefully the money will turn up eventually. We'll be millionaires. It's like this time in 10 years, Rodney, and
Yes.
and it's like I just don't believe you need, or even it's the right mode to put your life on hold and do stuff you don't want to do. If we focus on what we really love and really good at, as you've already said, then it's virtuous, but it's a mindset thing because
Yeah.
I find too many business people go, yeah, but it's okay, it's part of my job. We don't have to
It,
be.
no, it doesn't. And I mean, I think, I mean, again, I think I feel quite lucky in that respect, in that
Yep,
I think if you're good creatively, I think you perhaps know that quite early on in your, most people do. And I think
yep,
that's probably a bit easier to identify,
yep.
like from a young age. Whereas I think in some other industries, finding that good thing you're good at can be a little bit harder. So I think maybe yeah, maybe I have. It has, but at the same time, still have to identify that, don't you? You
Yes.
still, which isn't always that easy. So you
No,
have to.
sometimes you have to do some stuff to work out what that is. I mean, it isn't necessarily. I know exactly what I want from the day, from whatever age it is. But try stuff, but be comfortable. I think it's a great point. Is be comfortable if you're going to try stuff to go, no, that's not for me, and
Yeah,
not get stuck in it. And so yeah, the pursuit of happiness right now, I think is so important and is a success strategy. It's not just a nice to have strategy, I think
no,
is I would
I,
suggest.
I guess one sort of point I'd add to that is that occasionally, no, I'm not saying always, but I think it is good to push outside of your own expectations of yourself. Like
Yeah.
if
Oh yeah.
at the moment we're just trying to build the presence of Edna a little bit more, be a bit more active, be a bit more present,
Yep.
build our profile essentially. And none of the owners are natural salespeople, as it were.
Yep.
And I definitely am not. But you kind of have to step up to the challenge, right?
Yep.
Because owning your own business, no one else is going to do that. And and I have, I suppose, in many ways. I've started to anyway.
Brilliant.
And but if you'd have told me that 10 years ago that I'd be doing that, I'd have laughed in your face, But needs must sometimes. And actually, you surprise yourself and go, oh, maybe I'm not so bad at that. Actually, maybe I do kind of enjoy it as well. So
Brilliant. Yeah, I think it's a great. Yeah, yeah. There are things that we believe we don't know, and I think sales, especially, so many people do have this, whether it's a fear or a dislike, whatever you want to call it, discomfort. But I think part of that is, I think a big part of that is the perception of what sales is.
yes,
I appreciate that it was a general comment, but the specifics of sales, because I think one of the things that I do quite a lot of sales coaching and training because it is something that some people have to get their comfort zone, and one of the things is, I our definition of selling is professionally helping people buy what they need with the brackets of if you don't need it, you don't get it, and it just when we go through that, people sort of get. So you mean it's okay not to sell something to somebody? 100%. Because if we're not right for them, you mentioned earlier, if you're not looking to be different, great word, and whether you meant it to be a sales quote or not, this might not be right for you. Is a brilliant form of a sales process because it may not be right for you. And so let's get all out, get all away from any sort of concern that you get the classic people. Oh, he's going to sell me something. well, no, I'm going to help you buy something if you want it. That's all
Yeah,
sales is. It's just, but we have to establish what you want and whether we can help you before we get to that point.
yeah,
So well done, because it is. I think it's one of the biggest what are the right words, fear, concern, things that people don't want to get into is selling because of unfortunately negative connotations that has gone with it historically.
yeah.
Brilliant. And I think you're aware we're a business coaching organisation, Joe, and I'm just keen to know who the best coaches you've worked with, whether that was business, sport, life in general. Who's had the biggest influence on you?
I think if I'm gonna, I don't know if I've had a specifically good coach, but I've had a couple of really good mentors.
Great.
I think I really, I think my first role in a good design studio,
Yep.
there was a chap there called Lee. Lee was a few years older than me, but not, maybe 7 or 8 years older than me. And he was the senior designer at the time, and he really took me under his wing, as it were.
Yep.
And I needed that at that time. I needed a bit of focus.
Yep.
But he did it in a really, really good way. He did it with warmth, but firmness when needed, if that
Great.
makes sense.
Yep.
He really believed in me, and perhaps when I didn't believe in myself enough. And he was patient with my development, but at the same time,
Brilliant.
he did give me a kick up the arse when I needed it as well.
Brilliant.
And we do still keep in touch, but not as much as we used to. And I think, as I say, when I've been managing more junior people, it does remind me of like how Lee was very good at that. As I say, he was very timely for me, and I will ever sort of ever be thankful for him for that. I
Great.
think so. I think probably that's my sort of reference point for that one.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And whether it was from Lee or anyone else or any other source, do you have any favourite quotes or sayings about life or business or success that you catch yourself using on a regular basis?
Now, this is one I did prepare earlier.
Brilliant.
And I don't know if it's a favourite. I mean, it's not a favourite. It's definitely, but I'm not sure I have favourites. But I did read this the other day, and it really resonated. And I think particularly because of the sort of everything that's going on with the world today. And I feel it's a quote from a guy called Antonio Gramsci, and he used to be the leader of the Italian Communist Party. Now, don't let that put you off, right?
No, no, no. Yeah.
So the quote is that the old world is dying, and the new world struggles to be born, and now is the time of monsters. And it kind
Ooh.
of, and it's there's a lot
Ooh.
going on there,
Yeah.
but it felt to me like we only got to watch the news, open
Yeah.
LinkedIn, and you can kind of see this uncertainty, this
Yeah.
uncomfortableness that everyone's experiencing. But it maybe it is about hope. Maybe it is about actually something else is being born,
Yeah.
perhaps
Yeah.
something better, perhaps, and but the cost of that is uncertainty and short-term discomfort.
And
And
fear. Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I hope it is. I hope that's the way it's going to
Uh,
go.
Well, interestingly enough, we might as well believe it is because believing something else is going to be uncomfortable for quite a long time. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? It's I used to work with a guy and he had a great outlook and he said, "How would you like the future to be? Do you want to believe the future to be great or horrible? Um, so why don't you just choose great? Because we don't know.
no,
So
no,
and he basically said it is a choice because we won't know till we get there. So why would we spend all that time between now and then believing it would be negative? He had a great one. He said to me because he said, um, uh, what did he say? So he said, if I said to you right now, everything in the future is going to be correct. Every decision you make, every action you take is gonna work. Everything's gonna be perfect. You probably think I was a bit of a fool because we know it probably won't. But worry is believing most things are going to go wrong most of the time,
yeah, it's true.
and it's a choice. So we have a choice
Yeah,
between worry, i.e., it's going to go wrong. Now, as long as it doesn't stop us doing everything we can to make it right, why wouldn't we choose to believe it would be right?
yeah,
That's
we are the architects of our own destinies to a certain extent, right? And
absolutely.
there's a lot of that flying around at the moment. Oh well, we can't do anything about this. It's like, yeah, we can. We have the opportunity to shape these things.
Yep.
There's some powers that be that would like to think that we don't, perhaps, but we
Yep.
do. We do have the agency to shape those decisions and shape the
Yep.
future of our own industries. And
Yep.
maybe that's the optimist in me talking, but I'm gonna keep banging
What?
that drum, I think.
Why? What? Why wouldn't you have optimism? I mean, it's just like what's without optimism, it's a pretty stark future, really, in my opinion. I don't mean I'm not suggesting anyone that isn't optimistic is wrong. It's just it's a personal choice of why wouldn't I? And one thing I believe about myself, and I believe about most people, if we believe, that goes back to talking about quotes. There's a great quote from Henry Ford, which you may remember, which is as simple as whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right.
Yeah,
And so
yes,
optimism for me is I believe an optimistic view gives me a better chance of achieving it. Because a
mm,
pessimistic view is already believing I'm not going to achieve it.
yeah,
And so I think, yeah, no, fascinating. And it's interesting you say, don't worry about the connotations. You mentioned, it was the Italian Communist Party. I interviewed someone, I think it was last week or quite recently, and they recommended, we're going to talk about books in a second. They recommended the book The Prince, which was written by Machiavelli.
yes, I've read that.
Sorry, you've read it too, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And one thing he said was that it's got a lot of connotations that are actually not as valid as you think. It's not about primarily. His suggestion was it's not about negative manipulation. It's about understanding people and communicating better. That was his take on it, and therefore a good book to read, other than for choosing to want to be a manipulator. So I don't know your thoughts on that, but alongside that, do you have any favourite books or podcasts that you can recommend?
Um, I keep coming back to there's a book. I mean, I kind of find myself. I'd like to say I read really into highly intellectual books all of the time, but frankly, that's not true.
No, that's cool.
Sometimes, sometimes if I'm busy at work, I'm at my close to my capacity, I'll kind of retreat to reading like fantasy books,
Yes,
sci-fi books, and things like that.
perfect.
And I kind of alternate between. I try to between that and sort of more intellectual stuff. And there's one on that sort of latter end, I suppose. A book I did really enjoy. I read it a couple of years ago. Was *Sapiens*.
Oh
Uh, I,
yes,
yeah, I can't just want to think who the chap who wrote it was
it's
called.
yeah. I'm trying to think. It's not Meister, and it's a tipping point, guys, isn't it?
Let me just have a look. Yuval Noah Harari.
Yeah, it's not.
Um,
It's not what I thought it was. Yeah,
and I think there was always there's one bit in that which really stood out to me, and I've always remembered was this idea that humans haven't survived and evolved and essentially won the evolutionary race because we can communicate. We've done it because we build these imaginary structures, and those imaginary structures are essentially religions, businesses, things to believe in, and that stops us destroying each other. Well, it's most of the time,
most of the time.
and
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and actually those things are the things that have really helped us succeed, and those things are the actual things that have separated us away from animals, because animals can communicate
Yeah.
by other means that be, but and I know that's always really stuck with me. But yeah, that's Sapiens is a good one to read, and it's not
Brilliant.
just about that.
Yeah, no, no. There's quite a lot of good stuff in there. No, thank you. Yeah, great recommendation. And on on the learning front, what would you say you learned about yourself throughout your journey so far, Joe?
Um, I mean, I should have a look. I think I'm maybe lacking in self-confidence at certain points, and actually sometimes I think it's if you can find someone to talk to or find sort of people on your team, as it were, at sort of inflection points, that's really important to build that up and to talk stuff through.
Yep,
Um, so have confidence in your own ability, having more confidence in my own abilities.
yep,
Um, but I suppose also like I do a lot of exercise and I'm quite competitive. I always have done since I was a young, since I was young, and I've really I've sort of recognised through that I really enjoy pushing myself as
yep,
well, and I think that comes into my professional career as well. I'm not afraid to sort of jump headfirst into something and say, okay, what's going to happen, and I really go for it. So I think being comfortable with that sort of being able to push yourself is really, as something I've sort of learned about myself, and that I enjoy that as well,
yes.
because it's not always comfortable either.
No, no, and I guess that goes. back to talk about getting outside of your comfort zone and being uncomfortable, I guess, is all
Yeah.
part of that same sort of thing of yeah. The because I think there's a quote on it because I'm quite I mean I do read but also I guess from a leisure perspective I like watching films and things I do have and I pick lots of learning up from that and but I don't know if it was that from a series but just somebody saying a an easy life doesn't naturally create a great character.
Yes. Yeah.
And I just think that's a great way of looking at the challenges that we have. That this will, I hate, interesting enough, I hate the word character building. Oh, this is character building. I really don't like that phrase. But I get that point, and the other way around is that, yeah, you don't really have a great. It's difficult to develop a great character without some form of challenge and things
Yeah.
going wrong.
Yeah, and I think the easy choice isn't always the best choice, right?
Yes.
Sometimes it is, but it isn't always the best.
No.
And I think sometimes as humans we're programmed to often take the easy choice,
Yeah.
as a sort of survival instinct in a way. But I
Yes.
think being able to recognize that and go, actually, is that the best thing to do, particularly further down the line as well. And obviously, when you do own your own business, you have to think strategically. You have to think longer term. You
Yes.
have to, you'll never know what the sort of lies in the future, but you have to be able to go and think about what if
Yeah.
and model those different scenarios. So I
Yeah.
think that helps that really is go, okay, well, what if that easiest choice now isn't the best choice in the future?
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry.
No, no, great. No, sorry, no, it's great. I think it's a really good, and I think it's a really good point is that um, we should always think about what are the choices there are, because if it, it's easy, as you say, it's easy to go to the easiest one or the one that's the obvious one. But
Yes.
what else? What other options is there? Now, interesting enough, this is telling how terrible my film watching career is. That there's a film called it's a zombie film, so it's World War Z. World War
Yep.
Z.
Watched enough. Yep.
Watch the film. Yeah, no, I think it's good. It's an interesting film. But there's this point about how Israel had a much more successful approach to the whole zombie thing, and they ask, well, why did that happen? And they have this idea of the 10th man, where if nine people agree with some way forward, a tenth's got to absolutely disagree. However obvious, however, even if they think the way forward is the one, it's having that 10th person must disagree, which creates that I think drags people out of that. Well, it's obvious it's the way, whether it's the easy or the best or whatever it is. Well, what's the 180-degree view, and what would that look like? And I just think it's an interesting way of thinking about it. Is that if we fall into if just because most people think it's the right way doesn't make it the right way.
No, completely. I mean, I'm going to spin it back to what we do. Like we talked about, there's many facets of branding and creating brands, but
Yes.
the number one rule of a brand is don't blend in.
Yeah.
If you want to get picked up off the shelf, as it were, whether that shelf
Yep.
is the supermarket shelf or the online shelf, the first thing you've got to do is get people's attention. Now, there's
Yes.
lots of other things going on, and like being remembered, and lots, and
Yep.
being relevant and stuff like that. But yeah, stand out. There's actually, I think I've looked into this quite a bit of cognitive research about that. That we are programmed to remember the stuff that stands out as well. So
Yep.
yeah, stand out, question the status quo. And yeah, sometimes it might not be the right thing to do, but sometimes it is as well.
Yeah. Brilliant. Brilliant. And Joe, I'm keen to know you in Action Coach we have a definition of a true business. We call a true business, which is a commercial profitable enterprise that works without its owners. I'm just keen to know what your thoughts are on that as a definition. And
Um, I think we personally we're still working on that.
yeah,
Because of our structure, because there are five of us,
yes,
it means that we still do quite a lot of the day to day. But
yep,
yeah, you're right. There was a quote by one of the chap who owns Airbnb, and he talked about culture, and it was this idea: culture is the stuff that happens when you're not there. And that I
yes,
quite liked. We've done quite a
yep,
lot of work around that, and it's a
love
similar
it.
thing, isn't it? It's the decisions that your team make when you're kind of not
Yeah,
looking over them, as it were.
yes,
And I think perhaps, as I say, it's something to aspire to,
yeah,
and it takes a while to build as well. And I suppose it plays into that idea of hiring the right people at the right
Yes.
time, and communicating where you want to go as a business as well. I think is super important
Yeah.
to help to motivate people
I think
because
vision and culture together, yeah,
yeah,
are
because
really key.
yeah, we come to work to get paid, let's face
Yep.
it. But at the same time, there's more to it than that as well, because we
Yeah.
spend a hell of a lot of time at work. So you've got to give something people a little bit something to believe in, a direction or some sort of inspiration, I think. As I say, we're still working on that, but I don't think there's ever a moment you ever complete that either. I think like most things in business, it has to continually evolve
I agree.
as well.
I normally say to people, it's happy. I'm happy to put can in there, i.e., can work without its owners. Because if you really love what you do or parts of it, just keep doing them. I mean, it's not like you have to leave, but it's often for a while it's aspirational. It's achievable in most businesses, I believe, but it is moving towards it. I.e., but the virtuous nature of that is, as we said, it's empowering others to
Mm.
do stuff that they're really good at, finding people that are better than us at the things that they
Yes.
do, and getting out of their way. And I think it as a way forward, as a way of thinking for the future, it does sort of make sense. I think.
No, I agree, and that sort of stuff becomes particularly relevant when you're looking to sale or exit, doesn't it?
Yes.
We're not at that point,
Yeah.
and so I think it's something that at some point I hope we would be, and I think that conversation will start to become a bit more relevant. But we do need to be very aware of that as well.
Yeah.
Um, and but equally, I don't think we have ambitions to build 100-person, business at Edna. I think
Yeah.
we're quite comfortable in having us, I don't know, wouldn't want to put a number on it, but we enjoy knowing our team, and
Yeah.
we enjoy having relationships with them as well,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not, personal relationships,
No,
like
I
that.
completely get that.
Mm,
We got to, and I talk about this a fair bit. So my first business, we got to over 100 people, sort of 12 million turnover, and I will say to somebody, and it is to my regret that the first 20, when there was up to 20, we knew, everybody in the business. We knew them, their wives, the family, the pets, and 20 to 50, you start to know them, probably the wife, but that's about it. Other than,
yeah,
and then I remember, we were probably 80 people or so, and I remember going, who's that? Somebody had been recruited without. Now, and I don't take any. There's an element of saying, well, it's good that the business was running without me being completely involved. But I think ultimately that personal connection with as many people as you can. And in fact, we had Gary Vaynerchuk. If you're familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk, who's a American marketeer, very quite well, say quite well known. He's got like 50 million followers or something. So you
right,
either know him or you don't know him.
yeah,
He's an interesting guy. But we had him over as one of our keynote speakers, and he was saying, one of the key roles of a CEO, a chairman type role, is still to spend, preferably half an hour to an hour with every member of the team every month. He's trying to, he's building that. However big the organisation gets, I think it becomes impossible. But I guess you can chunk it down a little bit. But I think, yeah, it's really interesting. That personal connection between the leadership and the team is so key to build and retain great people.
yeah, and there's. I suppose we're probably going to touch on this in slightly later in the conversation, but there are lots of tools nowadays which enable us to be a little bit more efficient with our time as well,
Yes.
and we'll continue to do so, AI and things like that. So,
Yep.
and they empower smaller teams to act like larger teams.
Yep.
Specifically in my
Yes.
industry, in the creative industry, we've got lots of sort of structural problems with really large multinational advertising agencies at the moment. They don't hold the value like they used to. They're
Yep.
having to undergo huge changes
Yep.
because of that, because they've got so huge and so faceless, and they just aren't
Yep.
delivering for people. So I think from my perspective, there's some real value and will in the future of those small, highly trained, highly skilled people doing really big scale work. And I
Yeah.
think,
Brilliant.
as I say, AI and things like that will enable that, and has already
Yeah.
started to enable that as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Brilliant. Well, Brett, we'll speak of the future. What does the future look like for you guys, and what challenges do you think you might face, if any, Joe?
This is the million-dollar question, isn't it? I
Yeah.
guess, and we've actually been doing a lot of work on this at the moment, as I'm sure lots of people have. I mean, one, because it's that time of year, but also because
Yeah.
there's, our industry in particular is particularly susceptible to the headwinds of the AI and that's influence. So, AI is going to influence our industry and our future, whether we like it or not. No matter what your opinion is about it, it will change how our industry works and
Yeah.
how we create value for our clients. And I think that's the bit that we've got to work through at the moment as a
Yeah.
sector, as an industry, and go, how do we ensure what we do still works for our clients and is financially viable for us as well? I mean,
Yeah.
I think personally, I think it's about balancing technology with humanity as well. I think that's a big sweep statement, but it's doing both of those things. It's using technology for what technology is great at, which is efficiency and productivity, and using humans for what humans are great at, and that is creating something that is different.
Yeah.
The one thing that AI is not good at is creating something that hasn't existed before.
Yes.
By very definition, LLMs, they create things that are based on what already exists.
100%.
Uh, we're in the creative industry. That's the crux of what we do is creating
Yeah.
things which haven't existed before.
Yes.
So, I think it's about leaning into that and not leaning into efficiency and productivity and
Yeah.
things like that because the machines will beat us in that,
Hun-
frankly.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. For
Um,
repetitive tasks that follow a set of simple rules or that will become more complex, brilliant.
yeah,
But for just thinking, again, outside the box, how can you think outside of a box if
yeah,
you all you know is what's already in the box?
I,
It's
yeah, 100%. And I think the more conversations we have about this, and like we talked about it before, like that agency, we have the power to shape this.
yes,
We do as a not just as a art my industry, everyone else does as well. It doesn't. We don't need to just be dictated to in that conversation. We have the power to go. No, this is how we want to do this. This is the best way. So yeah, as I say, I think it's really important to have these chats, have conversations, talk about this stuff, and play a real active role in trying to shape that as well.
yeah, brilliant.
Um, I mean, the other thing, I guess, from which is more specific to the sort of creative agency model, is I don't think the agency model really hasn't changed that much in the last 30 or 40 years. Yeah, there's
Yes,
been tweaks and nudges and things like that, but the big question I have in my mind is the world's changed a lot, and what is asked of brands and clients is very different.
yeah,
And I'm not sure the agency model is quite gelling with that anymore and delivering,
right,
as well as it used to,
yeah,
perhaps.
yeah,
So, how do we need to evolve
yeah.
to better reflect, how clients are actually the pressures and challenges that clients are facing? It's
Interesting.
so fast paced out there, and we're used to working in, or not used to, but the agency model is big projects quite slowly, whereas actually out there in the real world, stuff doesn't happen like that anymore, or not quite as often anyway.
Yes,
So yeah, I don't know what the answer is there, but we are doing a little bit of work on that at the moment. So yeah, I mean, I'm not, planning to rewrite the whole agency model, but I do think we do need to do a bit of work on that as a whole.
but again, it will create something different, which is going back to your point about being different, standing out. It's it
Yeah,
makes
I,
perfect sense.
I think with AI and with the agency model, there's no point sticking your head in the sand with this sort of stuff.
No,
That's the worst thing you can do. Those changes are going to come. You might as well at least try and be part of that conversation.
yeah,
And so, as I say, I think doing nothing is the worst thing you can do right now. I think
yeah.
really trying to be open to those changes is probably the most important thing in my mind, anyway. Um,
Brilliant. And really wise words. I'm keen to know what you say to anyone that was thinking of going into business right now, Joe.
I mean, generally, I would encourage it. Like I think I come from my family was always quite entrepreneurial.
Yep,
Like my dad, my aunties and uncles as well. There's always been a lot of entrepreneurial spirit and independence within my family. So I think I have a certain perspective about it. But
yep,
I would always encourage it because I think it's always better to have tried something and failed at it.
yep.
There's so many other people that won't do that, but give it a bloody go. because you
Brilliant.
never know. Like you really don't. And like we touched on it before. And if you can find something that you're really passionate about, go do that as well.
Yeah.
Because it won't make business easier, but it's easier to motivate yourself
Yeah.
around that, I think.
No.
So yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect idea. And if you started again, is there anything significant you do differently, do you think?
Um, Initially, I don't think much because, as I say, it was born out of
Yeah.
it was a product of the time, really. So I think that
Yeah.
outset we made some really good choices. I think in reflection, in terms of, I think we should have probably, and I feel very contradictory saying that, invested in our own brand a bit more earlier on
Yeah.
in the process and invested in our own marketing a little bit earlier on.
Yeah.
We've probably only really got serious about that within the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, part of that is the agency landscape is so competitive out there.
Yeah.
So, I need to drink some of my own Kool-Aid a little bit, really, and take some of my own advice. But yeah, it's probably just investing in brand a little bit earlier in our journey, and maybe that's a learning for the people as well.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I think it's great. It's great that you've got that learning because I think, especially because that's the industry you work in. It's a great. It is a great bit of advice, and yeah, I think going back to things like people like Simon Sinek talking about this idea about why we do stuff. I
yeah,
think that the earlier we can be really clear on that, and then bring that out into the broader world, make sure people know that, the quicker we can differentiate ourselves and the why, because I think that is um, uh, that's our identity, which attracts not just clients, hopefully, but also um, employees, staff
yeah.
members. Uh,
Like-minded people,
yeah.
and I think
Yes.
that goes on, you know, clients and people, and clients and employees, because frankly, from a client perspective, you might have to work with this person quite a bit. You have to speak to them
Yes.
quite a lot. You
Yes.
want to you want to work with people you like, right?
Absolutely.
So you've got to have those shared values, and I think communicating
Absolutely.
those shared values is really important as well.
Couldn't
And
agree more.
brand is one way of doing that, but just being honest is a
Yeah.
really good starting point.
I
So
completely agree.
yeah,
I completely agree, and I think go back to your point about sales and selling. It's about this is who we are. If this is right for you, brilliant. If it's not, that's fine. We'll move on. Both of us, let
yeah,
a sale isn't about every time we go and see somebody they've got to buy from us because that's just not realistic. And
no,
the more we move towards people that we think and feel the same things are important, we get that that sharing of values. I think, and the easier everything becomes.
yeah, it really does, doesn't it? Like, yeah. So I think we've all got really good yeah detectors when somebody isn't being quite as
Yeah.
honest as they should be nowadays. We've honed those, and
Yes.
I think people can see through it.
Yeah.
They really can. So,
I agree.
yeah, that's probably you're right. That's a really good recommendation as well. Just I don't want to say be yourself because that sounds really bloody cheesy, but
No,
be
me so I think it's not. In fact, one of the quotes I got a while ago, which I loved, which also talks about sort of standing out, perhaps, is "Be yourself because everybody else is taken,"
yeah, classic. Yeah.
which I love. And final question, Joe, what would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do that?
think I think I made some well, like we probably all did, made some really good, some terrible decisions, but probably made a couple of some good ones as well along the way. And I think probably just looking back at some of those decisions, I think I probably made decisions when I wasn't listening to myself as much as I should have. So I think,
Ah, yeah,
maybe actually following your gut, yeah, it's a bit of a cliche, but
yeah,
I think there is some truth in it. And actually, if it doesn't feel right or you feels like you're doing it for someone else rather than doing it for you, then
yes,
probably isn't. So maybe just follow your gut a little bit more. Yeah, not all the
great
time,
point.
but yeah, it's it just you. I mean, you say your gut, but it's essentially your subconscious picking up on
Yeah,
things that you haven't necessarily perceived of yet. So yeah, maybe maybe also spend a little bit less time partying at university as well.
no, 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 you can't do enough of that. But yeah, no, that's a really good point about that. Yeah, subcon. Yeah, is and because I mean, especially nowadays, but is peer pressure is such a big thing, given that social media is around us all the time, and it's peer pressure. So don't think what other people think what you want to think, and do what you want to do.
Which is really bloody hard, isn't it? It
It
is,
really is, but it's
and
very sound advice.
and I think it's particularly when you're younger, it's hard, as we've
Yeah,
seen with lots of people. But yeah, having have that confidence in yourself a little bit, back yourself a little bit more, I
yeah,
think.
brilliant. Joe, it's been fascinating talking to you, and I really appreciate your time today. And it'd be great to swing by another 6 to 12 months and just see how that development that process you're on at the moment is working. But for anyone that would like to get in touch with you or Edna, what's the best way of making contact?
You can obviously check out our website. Our website is edna, that's edna.studio.
Yep,
Or you can quite welcome to drop me an email. It's Joe dot Simons at edna.studio. Or find me on LinkedIn. I'm normally on there having some strong opinions. So yeah,
brilliant.
but thanks for having me, Chris. It's been great to talk to you as well.
Joe, it's been delightful, and say thank you very much. There's real insights in that. But for now, thank you so much for your time.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank you.